Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's not quite a webinar, more of a massive digital event here at TechSmith. Today's session entitled Tim Slade's Secrets to Custom Animations, plus a little bit more. My name is Jason Valad, and I'm a senior training specialist here at TechSmith, and it is my privilege and honor to be your host for today's session. However, the gentleman you're here to see, the subject matter expert, the all-around great guy that's taking time out of his lovely day to teach us the amazing secrets that he has in his creation, Mr. Tim Slade. Tim, how are we doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm really doing
Good.
great.
It's
Happy to
Friday.
be here. Happy Friday indeed. Now, Tim is a speaker, author, award-winning freelance e-learning designer, and creator of the E-Learning Designers Academy. Having spent over a decade working to help others elevate their e-learning content, Tim has been recognized and awarded within the e-learning industry multiple times for his creative and innovative design aesthetics. Tim is also an international speaker, a LinkedIn learning instructor, and author of the E-Learning Designers Handbook. Tim, that's a lot, and we're so excited for you to be here with us today.
Yeah, I've done so much shit.
It's a lot.
It
Has
be
been
paragraphs
around
long.
doing, yeah. If it when you go to the second page, if we're not quite below the fold, that's a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
We're down with that. So, Tim's got a lot to share with us today, but before he gets to do what he gets to do, I get to do a little bit of housekeeping. So, let's start off with that. First and foremost, this is not a regular webinar, so our agenda is a little bit longer. We are going to be here for a little while. Hope you can stay for the whole thing. This first session, about an hour long, Tim is going to be talking about scripting for visual communications, crafting those engaging videos with Camtasia. I actually have my pen and paper here. I've been using Camtasia for the better part of 20 years, and I'm fully expecting to pick up some awesomeness from Tim. At the end of that break, we will have time for a little bit of a break away from the screen. We'll have people around here from TechSmith to answer some questions if needed. But then the second session will roughly start 15-ish minutes after that first one, where we're going to watch in awe with the scripting going to the screen, right? Mastering animations inside of Camtasia. This is where Tim's going to show you how he creates those masterful pieces of video art that he uses in his e-learning content. It's pretty exciting. At the end of
Yeah.
that session, we'll try and take some time for some questions, and then we've got a little preview of something we're cooking up here at TechSmith called Camtasia Online. We'll tell you more about that at the end of our session. Now, we know you're going to have a lot of questions. The first question we get asked in every single event that we host is, hey, is this being recorded? Yeah, it's absolutely being recorded, and it will be made available sometime in the next 24 to 48 hours on techsmith.com/webinars. When you go to that page, you can sign up for events just like this one, and there is a button in the lower left-hand side that asks if you're looking for previous sessions. You can click on it. You can watch it as many times as you want, share it with friends, family, colleagues. You'll be able to download it if you so find, if you want to put it in your learning environment for coworkers or friends. We have a lot of people that do that. They will be available as well at that recording mark. Now, as far as your other questions, we've got a couple ways you're going to interact with us today. First and foremost, if you have technical procedural questions around what Tim's showing, how it works in Camtasia, questions about what's being shown on the screen, we want you to put that in the Q&A portion of the Zoom webinar interface. We have a ton of TechSmithies here to help answer your questions. I'm not going to list them all because they're below the fold as well on my screen. There are so many people ready to help you out. The only thing I ask is that you give as much context to your question as possible. If you ask a question like, can Tim show that again? Or what button was that? We won't be able to answer those questions because the pace at which we move through this content is faster than we'll be able to reference back to the screen. But we promise to do our best. And while we can't promise to get to every question, we will do the best possible job we can. In today's session, we're also having the chat open, and we found that people have found that area. That is for casual chatter between other attendees. We won't be monitoring that as closely at all. So if you put questions in there, there's a good chance they're going to get missed. If it's a question, put it in the Q&A portion of the Zoom webinar interface. Last but not least, before Tim gets into his, we just say thank you, as we do with all of our sessions. There's a lot that goes into these, and we appreciate being able to create content and Tim's time creating content that's valuable to you. There's a couple things. Watch the session, engage with us. At the end of the whole session, there is a 1-minute 4-question survey that pops up to let us know, did we do a good job? Where did we miss the mark? What would you change if it was made just for you? Those things are in trade-off for the recording and the ability to save a little money. If you're going to techsmith.com and looking to add to your TechSmith collection, if you use that code WEB10 at checkout, you get an additional 10% off of your purchase. Tim, this is where I stop sharing my screen and I hand the proverbial power scepter over to you to get us started in today's event. I can't
Oh my
wait. Like I
goodness.
said,
All right. Well, thank you, Jason, and welcome everybody. I'm so happy to be here. And I see so many amazing names that I recognize. Let me get my screen set up here just to make sure I am sharing all of the right things. You should be seeing my screen. I see a
we
lot
are.
of names I recognize. Hi, Betty. Hi, Julie. Hi, Elmir. And thank you for the birthday wishes, everybody. I am 40 today. You wouldn't know it from my amazing skin complexion. You have to, the secret is moisturization, exfoliation first, and then moisturization. Those are the two things. So, well, welcome everybody. I'm so happy to be here. I got to say, myself and the folks at TechSmith, we were really blown away by the turnout here. We had over 3,000 people sign up for this event. We have 1,200 and people grow here now and growing. And I got to tell you all, there is not, and I mean this so truthfully, I've been doing this for a long time in this industry, and there is not a company in this industry that takes their users and their customers more seriously into heart than TechSmith. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times I have bubbled up an idea or presented an issue, and those things are in the product. And there are a lot of companies in this industry that do not listen to their users, and TechSmith is not one of them. So I thank everyone at TechSmith for having me. This is so exciting for me. So. Now, with that out of the way, what are we talking about today? Gosh, as much as I market myself, in the industry as an e-learning instructional designer, I oftentimes feel like I'm more often than not a video producer. I do video all day long. I'm using recording myself, if not multiple times a week, every single day, and I'm editing video. Almost every single day. And that tool that I use all the time is Camtasia. And so what I want to do today is I want to show, and I've been wanting to do this for such a long time, is I want to show my video creation process. If you see something that I post on YouTube and you wonder, okay, well, what goes into how do I script those things? How do I film those things? How do I edit those things? That's what I want to show you all today. And obviously I'm going to be using and referencing a lot of my stuff off of YouTube for the examples here today, but what I want you to know is that everything that I'm talking about today, if you happen to be an instructional designer back in the job, maybe you're not doing YouTube content. That's okay. I promise you, everything that I'm going to be showing are things that you can use back on the job, even if you're just creating, compliance training or what have you, right? All right. So, real quickly, just so I can see a chat, you can all see my slides. You should see a face of me, secrets to my production process. I just want to make sure. Thank you, Eve. I appreciate it. All right. Let's go forward. Okay, so I've been doing YouTube and I've been doing videos for, gosh, over 10 years now. And my videos have changed a lot over the years. This screenshot here, I used to record all of my videos in my living room. I'd wait till my partner went to work, and then I would pull out all of my equipment and my camera, and I would set up and record, and then I would project onto the TV behind me like my brand image, and I would record all this crap, right? And then eventually I built a little at-home studio and I was able to record in there. And then we were in between homes and I had to record in this really awful extra bedroom of this horrible apartment that we were living in. And then we moved into the house I'm in now, and then I had this setup here and I recorded, and then I finally have the setup that you see here today and that I use now for my recording process. I've been doing video for a really long time. Um, and one of the questions I get all the time, if you were to go onto my YouTube channel and look at the comments, the question I get all the time is something along the lines of, what software do you use to edit your videos? Hey, what software are you using to create your videos? I want to reverse engineer that. I like the look of that. What software do you use to edit your videos? What screen recording app, video editor you use? This is probably the most common question I get on all of my video content, which is the reason why when I was talking to the folks at TechSmith, I'm like, I get this question all the time. We need to record something so that I can just link back to it. So really, this is the selfish reason why we're doing this, so I can have something to answer these questions to. But I get asked this question all the time about my YouTube content is how do I edit it and how do I create it? And that's what I'm going to show you here today. So let me actually go back to this slide. I think a lot of times, when you look at somebody's really great video content, right? We all watch YouTube and we all have our favorite channels. when you look at somebody's YouTube content, it's easy to make assumptions that, oh gosh, they just know how to do everything and they have some secret magical powers that they've learned over the years. And like I showed you a moment ago with all those different screenshots of my different setups over the years, video has been something that I have been working and iterating on for years and years and years and years. And for anyone else out there who has done video work, it's almost this obsession of trying to figure out how do I perfect my audio, my video, my scripting, my on-screen presence, and all of these things. But one of the things that I know some of you know this about me, not everybody knows this about me, but video work actually goes way deeper into my career and into my history than I think most people realize. You know, my very, 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 very first instructional design project was actually a video-based project. I used to catch shoplifters for a living, and I worked at Kohl's department stores. And my very first project was to design and develop this series of e-learning courses on the process for catching shoplifters. And so we hired all of these actors. This is a picture of them. I'm over there where that little cursor is. That's me. I was 23, 24 years old. I had no clue what the heck I was doing. But I was fortunate enough that we had our own internal video production team. So I was like, well, why don't we hire these actors and we film these scenarios of shoplifters, catching shoplifters. And that was my first introduction into video production. And I learned so much from that experience, from lighting and audio and, how you set up and function a camera, right? And I had little idea or anticipation that any of those skills I would use later in my career. And then if we fast forward a few years later, gosh, this was back in 2017, maybe, I had the opportunity to do some work with LinkedIn Learning and go out to their studios in Carpentria, California, and I had the wonderful opportunity to film with them. And that was another opportunity where I got to learn a little bit more about the video production process. And you can actually see, you see the background there in that video, the paneled wall. They were really the first people to start using those, and you'll see those in a lot of videos now. I put those in my videos as my background. But there was all these like little experiences that I got to pick up these different tips and techniques and learn from people that I use today when I create my video content. And what I hope to do is to impart a little bit of that onto all of you so that you can figure out if you want to start doing video, even if you're not doing on-camera work, but you're just doing, animation work or what have you, give you some tips to help you do that. So we're going to talk about really three things today. In part one, we're going to talk about scripting and storyboarding. How do I go about planning, scripting, and ideating on the videos that I create? And then I'm also going to spend some time talking about how I film and produce my videos, primarily focusing on the equipment that I use, but I also want to share a little bit of, if you don't want to spend thousands of dollars, what's some affordable equipment that you can use to at least get yourself up and running. And then in part two, we're going to talk about editing and animating. And so I'm going to walk you through some of the common things that I use in Camtasia to edit and animate my videos. And I think these are some of the features that are hidden in plain sight that most people don't even realize that is possible in Camtasia. So I'm really looking forward to that. All right. So as Jason said a moment ago, I'm going to run through all this content. We have so much to cover today. I have so much I want to show you. So I'm not paying attention to chat or questions. So Jason will try to collect them. We'll have some time at the end of each session, and I will do my best to answer questions. If we don't get to your question, you can reach out to me offline. I don't care. Send me a message on LinkedIn or whatever, okay? And we'll find however to answer your questions. So let's start by talking about, I was gonna have a mouse cursor do some cool things there. Let's talk about scripting and scripting for visual communications. So one of the things that I've been asked many times before is people ask how much planning and scripting goes into the content that you see on YouTube. And the truth is, I script probably 95% of everything that you see on YouTube. I am somebody who I could just keep talking for hours and hours and hours about a thing. And so I found that in order to create the content that you see on YouTube, I have to script it, not just to keep myself on track, but when we're talking about how do you plan and execute the creation of video content, especially when you're focusing on visual communication, it's really important that you're properly setting up the content of your video to optimize it for visual communications. It's really hard. If I were to just like start talking at the camera, it would be really hard for me to then later, after the fact, figure out how am I going to visualize the concepts that I'm trying to explain to my audience. And so one of the things that I'm always thinking about when I'm going into creating a video, whether it's a video for my YouTube channel or if it's a video I've done for a client for an educational purposes, I categorize them into three buckets. Am I trying to explain a concept to my audience? Am I talking to them, explaining something? Am I trying to demonstrate a tool or a process? Think of that like a system walkthrough or something along those lines. Or am I trying to visualize a story? Whatever the case might be, whatever my goal is, that oftentimes influences what it is that I'm wanting to visualize and how I go about scripting it to optimize it for that. And that may not make sense right now, but I'm going to show you a lot of examples where I explain this. So let's start with the first one, explaining a concept, right? One of the most common types of videos that you see on YouTube is what we call talking head videos, where somebody's just talking to you, explaining a concept. I do those occasionally. I try not to do them as often because they can get a little bit boring, but I always like to script those as well. So one of the things I'll walk you through, we're going to walk through some scripts, and then I'm going to show you how I record it and how I animate it. It all starts with your content and what it is that you're stating to your audience. And whenever I'm writing and scripting my videos, the most important thing for me in order to maintain a level of authenticity in what I'm presenting to my audience is I always write like I talk. So here's a good example of a script from a YouTube video that I did. This one was a video that I published at the beginning of the year. I'll put a link to it in chat. Actually, I have it here. Give me 1 second. I'm going to minimize a few things on my other monitor here. See if I can get it here. There we go. This was a video on a 2025 pep talk for people in instructional design. So I'm going to throw that into chat here. And as you can see here, this was literally what I scripted out and what I read through my teleprompter. And I'll talk a little bit about that here in a moment. But when I say write like you talk, I mean it quite literally. So I'm going to read this as if I were filming it. And this is how I talk. Hey there, folks. Tim Slade here from the E-Learning Designers Academy. Can you believe it's 2025 and we're already halfway through? Well, now we're already halfway through March. Over the last few years, I have made it my mission to kick off the new year with a video to share some big ideas and deep food for thought questions to help you navigate your instructional design and e-learning development career and skills. Last year, it was my no BS advice for your career in 2024 and in 2023, so forth and so on, right? But one of the things I want to highlight here, now I'm no longer doing my presentation voice. When I say write like you talk, you'll notice as we look at that script here, I will literally put in stuff like, or so, or I will even sometimes put in pauses where I want to have a dramatic moment. I write like I talk. And so if you're ever doing any sort of on-screen content, one of the things I encourage you to do is I learned really early on is that we're trained oftentimes as we grow up to not write like we converse. And so whenever I'm scripting something, I will literally sit here in my office and I will read it out loud. And it's usually through the act of reading it out loud where I will discover all of my normal inflections, all of the contractions that I use, all of that stuff, and I will embed that into my script. And not only does that help my videos feel more authentic, but it actually makes my recording process more smooth because as I'm reading it along the teleprompter, it's already optimized for how I would normally explain that to somebody. You know what I mean? Okay, let me continue on my slides here. So let me give you an example here. We're going to play this and just watch this. This is a good example where you can see the video and hey there, folks. Tim Slade here from the E-Learning Designers Academy. Can you believe it's 2025 and we are already halfway through January? It is crazy. Over the last few years, I have made it my mission to kick off the new year with a video to share big ideas and deep food for thought questions to help you navigate your instructional design or e-learning development career, and of course, help you build your skills. Last year, it was my no BS advice for your career in 2024, and in 2023, it was about growing your career. I have to be honest, I wasn't that creative with my video titles back then, but that's neither, here nor there. But you know what? If you've been following me for any amount of time, then you know how much I cannot stand career or skills advice that falls into the category of magical thinking or shortcuts that don't really exist or actually get you anywhere in the real world. And you know what? As I've said before, and I'll say again, if it sounds too good to be true, that's because it is. All right. So it's a good example of what it quite literally looks like when I'm filming and delivering to camera. And that's what I see on my end when I'm reading from a teleprompter. And what I will tell you all, if you've never read from a teleprompter before, it takes a lot of practice. In that particular video that you saw, you didn't see any of the mistakes or anything like that. I usually cover those up with jump cuts, and I'll show you some examples of that in our second half of our session. But you can see that, I'm reading it quite literally as I talk, and there was a few moments where I was filling in some, thoughts or gaps that I didn't include in my original script, but because it was already written in that conversational tone, it allowed me to deliver it in a more authentic way. And the reason why that's important is we've all seen what it looks like when somebody's reading off of a teleprompter and they haven't actually practiced the delivery, or it isn't written in a way that's truly how they normally would deliver something like that. And so writing as you talk, practicing it out loud, and even practicing with a teleprompter can help you get you there. And I'll cover all the equipment that I use for the teleprompter and all that stuff here in a moment. So that's explaining a concept. My purpose in showing that will lead into these next two examples that I want to show. But that first example is really focused on writing in a casual tone, because the thing that you have to remember is that whether it's at work, whether it's on YouTube, whatever the case might be, if you're delivering something to camera, people want to feel like there's another human on the other end of it talking to you like a human, like you're just sitting there having that conversation. It's about that authenticity and being a little less polished than you would be if you were writing it for the written, word meant to be, read, if that makes any sense. Let's now move over into how I plan out videos when I'm demonstrating a tool. So I mentioned a moment ago that I usually script out like 90% of what I'm going to deliver on camera. And there are a few exceptions to that. And one of those exceptions happens to be when I'm doing a walkthrough of a piece of software. Early in my career, I don't know if this will resonate with anybody, but early in my career, one of the things that I would try to do is I would try to, if I was going to do like a system walkthrough or a screen, how to use a particular piece of software, I would try to script out what I was going to say. And then I would try to read the script and record my screen and click the things at the same time. And I realized that is like way too much multitasking for anybody to able to, do in any sort of way that sounds natural or human or easy. And then I did the opposite extreme. I thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to record my audio, and I'll record the audio for everything that I'm going to do. And then I'm going to record my screen separately. But then what that resulted in was me like having to like record my audio, put on my headphones, listen to what I was saying, and then try to record my screen and do the clicks like in time with the screen so it would just all sync up. That was so much of a headache. And then I thought, okay, well, then I can use editing magic. Like I'll record my audio and then I'll just record the clicks on the screen, and then I can sync them and adjust them. And that does work, but that requires a lot of time and effort. And then eventually at some point I was like, screw all this. This is crazy. I'm just gonna walk through it as if I were sitting next to you at your desk saying, hey, Betty, this is how we click on this, and I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna deliver it that way. And I found that tends to resonate with people a lot more because it sounds like and it feels like I'm sitting there next to you, walking you through it, right? So let's look at an example of this. So with these sorts of videos, I will script the opening and then I wing the rest of it. So in this example, I'll say, hey there, folks, Tim Slade here from the eLearning Designers Academy. If you were like me when I was first getting started, I used to be a horrible visual designer and graphic designer. It's one of those skills that doesn't come naturally, and I know that's certainly true for me, and it was true for a lot of you as well. But you know what? Here's the question. I get asked this all the time. How can you practice and become a better visual designer and hopefully apply those skills to your next e-learning project? Well, here's the harsh truth. The only way that you can do that is become a better visual designer is to practice visual design. That is it. There are no shortcuts besides hiring and outsourcing, all your visual design work to an actual graphic designer. I mean, that's fine, but it's not a lot of fun. And no, you can't do it all with AI, despite how many times I see people attempt it. So don't go there with me today. It's kind of like learning how to bake a cake. If you want to learn how to bake the perfect cake, no amount of watching Ina Garten or the Food Network or reading every single recipe in a book is going to make you a better baker. You have to actually know how to bake a cake, and you're going to have to make a lot of crappy cakes before you learn how to make a better cake. Well, the same is true for becoming a better visual designer. So in this video, I want to show you exactly how to do that for yourself, how you can practice your visual design skills. And the best part is it doesn't cost you any money. You just have to have some fun in PowerPoint. So let's jump into it. So I will script that and I'll read that and then I'll say cut to screen recording. And then I just go straight into it. So it's scripting the opening, maybe scripting the closing, but that middle part, I'm just winging it. And I'm just going to show you what I'm going to show you. And I'm going to talk to the camera like a normal human being, right? So let me show you an example of what that looks like so you can see the side by side of those two things. Hey there, folks. Tim Slade here from the eLearning Designers Academy. If you were like me when I was first getting started, I used to be a horrible visual designer and graphic designers. It's one of those skills that, just doesn't come naturally. And I know that was certainly true for me. And I know that's true for a lot of you as well. But, here's the question I get asked all the time. How can you practice and become a better visual designer and hopefully apply those skills to your own e-learning development projects? Well, here's the harsh truth. The only way you can become a better visual designer is by practicing visual design. That's it. There are no other shortcuts besides, hiring and outsourcing all of your visual design work to an actual graphic designer. I mean, that's fine, but it's not a lot of fun. And no, you can't do it all with AI, despite how many times I see people attempt it. So don't go there with me today. It's kind of like learning how to bake a cake. If you want to learn how to bake the perfect cake, no amount of watching Ina Garten on the Food Network or reading every single recipe in a book is going to make you a better baker. You got to actually, bake shit and make a lot of really crappy baked goods along the way to eventually become a better baker. Well, the same is true for becoming a better visual designer. So in this video, I want to show you exactly how you can do this for yourself, how you can practice your e-learning visual design skills. And the best part is it doesn't cost you any money. It just costs you some time and some fun in PowerPoint. So let's jump into it. All right, so here I am on my computer and you can see I'm using PowerPoint. Now, before we jump into this, okay, so it ends right there. So that's a good example where I'm scripting the important part, like establishing the video. But then once we get into the meat of it, I'm just winging it. I'm just continuing on being my normal self and walking through it just like I would walk through it if I was sitting next to somebody at work, right? And then, I might script the closing part of it, right? And sometimes in this particular case, I don't know if anyone noticed it, there was a slight edit from when I recorded the opening and then I started recording the demo part of it, right? In that particular case, those were two separate recordings and the edit made it feel a bit more seamless. But in the real world, I might record my opening and I'm recording my screen and then I'm just going to go straight into it and eventually just ignore that teleprompter, right? The key in order to do that successfully, though, is you have to really understand what it is that you're demonstrating to your audience, the steps and the workflows that you're going to work through. And so, a lot of the prep for that middle part, that chunk where you're winging it, but you've already prepped the demo file, you've prepped what you're showing, kind of generally the flow you're going to take. You're just now explaining it to somebody, right? So it does require some prep on the front end. I couldn't just open up a tool and start training on it and get through, from point A to point Z without having a clear sense of like, where am I going with this, right? So a lot of times what I'll do, it's not in this example here, but, in the teleprompter where it says cut to screen recording, I will let that play and then I'll have some bullet points that I can just see on my teleprompter while I'm recording to be like, oh yeah, go here and then go there. Like if I can have 5 bullet points that kind of tells me the major things I want to feature, then I'll leave that up on the teleprompter so that I can focus on that and know where I'm going, right? Okay, so that's demonstrating a tool. Now, the third concept that I want to explain, and this is where things get a little bit more complex, is visualizing a story, right? So we started about explaining a concept, right? Just doing a talking head video. Am I talking at camera? Maybe I have some B-roll. I'm scripting that like I talk for that form of delivery. We talked about demonstrating a tool or a process. So that's kind of a next level of complexity where I'm talking to camera, but then I'm also going and recording my screen. I think this third type of video that I do, and this is where I get a lot of the questions of what tool am I using, is when I'm visualizing a story. When I say visualizing a story, I'm really talking about an animated explainer video. And you see this a lot in my videos, even when I'm doing a talking head video, there might be a cutaway to some sort of visual explanation on screen, or sometimes there's, it's just my voice and there's no me, no video of me, and I'm just doing a visual explanation. So I'm going to show a couple of different examples, but I'm going to first talk about how do we properly script and prime ourselves for a visual communication like this. When I'm talking about an animated explainer video. And really what we're trying to do when you're creating animated explainer videos is we're trying to move from telling and we're trying to move to explaining, but you really want to move from explaining to showing, right? We're moving from telling to showing. And in order to do that, it all starts with the content. You have to script and optimize your content for visual communications. And I have some strategies on how I do that. But the thing that I always tell people, it's very similar for any of you out there who do e-learning development, and you're creating storyboards for your courses. If you start with bullet points in a storyboard, you're going to end up with bullet points on your screen, right? And the same is sort of true when it comes to scripting for visual communications, is that if you have a lot of bullet points or you have a lot of content where you're just telling, it's really hard to figure out later on the back end, how do I visualize all of this stuff that I'm talking about? And then usually what people do is they end up just putting bullet points all on the screen, right? What we want to do is we want to avoid that, and we want to script in a way where we are strategically explaining a concept in a way that's already optimized for visualizing it on our screen. And there's this great quote from Nancy Duarte. If anyone follows Nancy Duarte, she's author of Slideology, Resonate. She owns a very popular presentation design firm, communications firm out in California. One of the things she talks about is helping your learners see what you're trying to say, right? That's really what we're trying to do with video. It's all a visual communications medium. And so how do we script in a way where we can optimize those words to help our learners see the things that we're trying to say, right? Because otherwise, if we're just repeating our words on the slides or on the screens, then like, what's the point of it being a video? It should just be a document at that point, right? So it all starts with your words. And one of the things, this is a saying that I've said for years and years and years now, and I'm constantly reminding it to myself as I script out stuff, is I never script anything that I can't show visually. And so the thing that I'm asking myself when I'm scripting something, especially something I want to show somebody, is I'm asking myself in my mind as I read the text that I wrote, I'm trying to quite literally visualize what would I see as I was explaining this. And if my mind is blank, if I can't see the thing that I'm trying to explain, then it's usually a cue that I need to go back and rescript it until I have something in my mind for how that content would be visualized, right? And I'll give you some strategies that help you do that. One of the things I learned is there's certain things that I use in my scripts that tee me up for a visual communication. So I might explain a concept. I'm going to explain, why learning visual design is like learning how to bake a cake, right? You got to like bake a lot of crappy cakes before you learn how to bake good cakes. So let me show you. Or for example, or imagine your blah, 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 right? These sorts of little transition statements, these sorts of words where you're teeing yourself up to say, for example, and then you're describing something. Let me show you how. Now I'm going to show you something. Imagine those sort of transition statements put you in a space where you're going to start describing things that you can then communicate visually, right? So let's take a look at some examples. But first, I want to talk about one of the ways that I do that is as I'm scripting something out, I also sketch out my ideas. Now, I will tell you, as you'll see here in a few moments, I'm a horrible drawer. I can't draw for the life of me. But usually doing some sort of drawing helps me start to plan out and visualize what I might put on the screen, right? And I'll give you a really great example. I have this student in my cohort program inside the eLearning Designers Academy, and she's doing her initial storyboard. And she started out by sketching her ideas. Now, she's a much better sketcher than I am. But this particular opening to this course, it's a course on earthquake preparedness in Japan. And so as I walk through this, you're going to kind of see how this these sketchings can almost help her start telling the story. And you can almost see the course come together in this opening. So it's earthquake response in Japan. We have a start button there. And then we open up, meet Luca. It's Monday afternoon. You're sitting in the staff room on break when, and then we have the next button. So this one's a little bit more of an interactive storytelling, right? So Luca is in the locker room, and then all of a sudden the locker room is shaking. Luca, with a startled expression, shaking added to simulate the earthquake. Text box appears after shaking stops. Click on Luca to check if he's okay. All right, so we move on. We click on Luca. We see him. We're zoomed in on him. Next button appears after the first speech bubble. Subsequent clicks will trigger each remaining speech bubble. We have some text, hey, Luca, are you all right? Luca. And he goes, sorry, I'm still in shock, right? My first thought was grab the company earthquake manual out of the locker, but it felt like we were shaking forever. And I blink and it was all over. Every time there's a quake, I tell myself I'll be better prepared for the next one, right? So we're kind of setting up the stage for the content that we're going to learn in this course, right? And we're presenting a character, somebody that, as my target audience or her target audience, they can see themselves in, right? We're creating empathy there. Then we move forward. So then we have a self-assessment. So this is an interactive self-assessment for this particular course, but we see the sketch of the person, we see the little the bars there, and then we have the learner self-assessment, and then we have our objectives, that sort of thing, right? But these simple sketches are already priming her for when she creates her prototype and visualizes the content on the screen, right? So let me show you how I do that with not as pretty of sketches. I'm going to show you two examples. The first one I'm going to show you is from the Snagit certification. So back in like 2020, I can't believe it was 5 years ago, I worked with TechSmith and I helped them create their Snagit certification. And some of you might have seen this before. And in the opening of the Snagit certification, there is this video that explains the concept of how Snagit can be used to help you with visual communication, right? So we have this little animated video here at the beginning. Now, in this particular instance, I have to say, when you're creating animated video content, especially for a client, it's not for yourself, there's a little bit more at risk because you can script it out, but then you don't want to just go animate the whole thing because that takes a lot of time. You don't want to animate the whole thing without getting some intermediary check-ins with the client to make sure, are they good with the visual direction? Are they good with the graphics you're using before you actually animate the whole thing? So I'm really going to show you two things here. How I scripted and optimized it for visual communications, how I ideated on my ideas, but then also like how did I work with an end client to get their input and approval before I did all of the heavy lifting work of actually animating the thing, right? So I'm going to show you parts of the script and then I'm going to show you my ideation process. So like I said a moment ago, what I'm constantly thinking about is like, what could I present on the screen to visualize the thing that I'm stating, right? So let's do the first line here. Imagine for a moment you need to help a remote coworker learn how to perform a specific task within a new system at work. How would you do that? So my question for all of you, put in chat, what could I visualize on the screen for that particular sentence or two sentences? What are your thoughts on that? And there's no right or wrong answer. Anything you can come up with. A
I
person
mean,
with a thought bubble. Oh my gosh. Yes.
I'll
Asking
speak
at her
up then.
desk. Idea bubble. Confused person. Yeah. Okay. There we go. I'll sketch that. A person with a thought bubble with a question mark, right? Let's move on to the next one. Well, you could write out a long, detailed email. However, that would take a lot of your time and may not make much sense to your coworker. What could I put there for writing out a long, detailed email? System interface, maybe a screen recording with Camtasia, frustrated looking coworker, Yeah, how about a frustrated looking coworker, right? She's sitting at her desk, she's writing out this long email, she's not happy. These are my actual sketches, by the way. I cannot draw. All right, let's go on to the next one. On the other hand, you could both hop onto a web conference and walk your coworker through each step, but that means you have to find the time that works for both of your business schedules. And what happens if your coworker forgets something you showed them and they need more help or a reminder later on? So what about this? Any thoughts on this? Calendar, two people with computers and questions. I like that, Lisa. Okay. Yeah. Two people on their computer, unhappy with two different times. So maybe we do a split screen, right? All right. Let's go to the last one. Instead, what if you captured a couple of screenshots and combined them with some text and icons to create a how-to document where you could record a quick screen recording and explain each step in the process, right? Now, I'll stop here. This one's pretty obvious, right? Okay, I'm gonna, oh, that's not the right, do we have the right one? Yeah, no, sorry. I didn't have the right one there. That's okay. But the last one's there, the happy coworker with their new job aid that they created in Snagit, easy peasy, right? And it's our new ending, life is all better, right? All right, so I have a really rough sketched out storyboard for how I might visually communicate that, right? They're not pretty sketches. I may not show these to my client. I'm not going to show them to TechSmith, but they're good enough for me to move on to the next step of my creation process. So you have these sketches, then what do? Right? Well, then you start inventorying your visual needs. This is the beautiful thing about when you sketch out your ideas like this. You get really clear about what do I need to visualize this? I need two characters. I need them to be sometimes happy. I need them to be sometimes sad. I need some office environment stuff. I might need to create some of my own graphics for the job aid, that sort of thing, right? And so I start inventorying my needs. Now, the big thing that to understand about, when you're creating animated explainer video content like this is that you're balancing a couple of different priorities. You're balancing what you have in your mind's eye. So you have a specific vision of what you want it to look like. That's going to be balanced against what graphics you're able to go obtain in order to bring that to life. And that's also balanced against what you're capable of creating on your own. Okay. So I might have a very specific vision in my mind of what I want to do, but I might be limited in terms of what graphics I have available to me in order to do that. And then I might be limited by what am I capable of or what do my tools allow me to do, right? So I can use Adobe Illustrator, but maybe you don't have Adobe Illustrator. So you have to figure out how could I animate it in or create the graphics in PowerPoint or Canva or whatever you're using. The thing that you have to remember is that there's going to be a little bit of sacrifice in all three of those priorities, and you're going to fall somewhere in the middle. Now, for this particular project, I used a website called Envato Elements, and I found this character pack where it has the character, it has the computer, she has different expressions, and I thought, oh, this is perfect. This is exactly what I need for this, right? Was it what I was envisioning in my mind's eye? Probably not, but it was what was available to me, and I knew that I could edit these in Adobe Illustrator, right? So I grabbed those graphics. And then again, I'm not going to go animate the whole thing just yet, right? Instead, what I did is I just started mocking up, taking my sticky notes, taking those character graphics, and I started mocking up still images of each little scene, right? So we have our character, and she needs to figure out how to help that remote coworker with that new system, right? With the question mark. So I mock that up. And then I mock up the next one. All right. So she's at her desk, she's unhappy, the clock is ticking. So I mock that up. And then we get to the next one. So we have our two coworkers. They're both unhappy because they're two different time zones. Nobody wants to be on Zoom all day, except for today. And then I mock that up, right? And then we get to our final, outcome. She's created her job aid with Snagit. Life is all better. Everyone can go back to their jobs. There's our, our ending there, right? So then what I do in order to move from, again, having that idea, getting approval with the client, is I create effectively like a video prototype. When we think about prototyping from an e-learning development standpoint, we kind of have a concept of what that means, like a sample. How do we create a happy medium of a sample from a video standpoint, right? So what I did is I recorded some scratch audio and I took these still screenshots and I synced up the still screenshots in Camtasia. So I'll show you an example of what this looks like to create that prototype. There's no animations. It's just the still screenshots along the way.
Well, imagine for a moment that you need to help a remote coworker learn how to perform a specific task within a new system at work. How would you do that? Well, you could write out a long, detailed email. However, that would take a lot of your time and may not make much sense to your coworker. On the other hand, you could both hop on a web conference and walk your coworker through each step. But that means you need to find time that works with both of your business schedules and what happens if your coworker forgets something you showed them and they need more help or a reminder later on. Instead, what if you captured a couple of screenshots and combined them with some text and icons to create a how-to document? Or you could record a quick screen recording to explain each step in the process.
All right. So that's like a rough prototype of that, right? Then I send that off to the client. They get input and they're able to input on the visual style before I spend all that time animating the whole thing, right? There's a really great question in chat, like, why not just use a tool like Vyond, right? I'll answer that question. You know, when you're doing client-focused work, one of the things that clients want is they want something that they couldn't just create themselves. You know what I mean? And a lot of times when you're doing client-focused work, they want something that's unique to them and doesn't look like everything else. And you know, this isn't a ding against Beyond. It's just a ding against a lot of those really clicky, easy tools. Is that some of those video tools or some of those other tools, like once you've seen one of them, you've seen all of them. You know what I mean? Same thing's true with like Rise. Once you've seen one Rise course, it's like you've seen every single Rise course, right? So in this particular case, you know, if I were going for something quick and easy, I might use a quick and easy animation tool that has stock characters and all of that stuff. But in this case, we were creating a more custom video. So that's why, right? All right, so strung that together, right? And then I animate the final thing. So I'll show you the final animation here.
Imagine for a moment you need to help a remote coworker learn how to perform a specific task within a new system at work. How would you do that? Well, you could write out a long, detailed email. However, that would take a lot of your time and may not make much sense to your coworker. On the other hand, you could both hop on a web conference and walk your coworker through each step. But that means you have to find a time that works with both of your business schedules and what happens if your coworker forgets something you showed them and they need more help or a reminder later on. Instead, what if you captured a couple of screenshots and combined them with some text and icons to create a how-to document? Or you could record a quick screen recording to explain each step in the process. Either way, you will have created an on-demand resource that will help your coworker actually see what it is that you're trying to explain. And the great thing is, you now have something that you can share and distribute with other coworkers who might need the same help in the future. And it's this that makes visual communication such a powerful and popular method for conveying information. By using visual communication to share your message, you're able to save time, save money, and communicate better by helping your audience see what you are saying. So, as you progress through this Snagit certification course, keep the concept of visual communication in the back of your mind. Whether you need to create a how-to document with a series of screenshots, an informal demonstration with a screen recording, or a professional-looking graphic to enhance your next presentation, in this course we'll explore how you can use Snagit to visually communicate your message to your audience.
All right, so that's a good example where my ability to visually communicate that, ironically on a video about visual communications, it required me to script it in a way where I was telling a story, right? I couldn't just explain like, here's why Camtasia is great for you. Here are 3 bullet points. You have to literally introduce a character and here's a story and here's a situation, right? And it all kind of tees me up for how I visually communicate that. Now, in our last little bit of time, let me show you another example. This one's a little bit more of a complex example. This was a video that I created last year as a promo video for my company, the eLearning Designers Academy. And I loosely call it a commercial, if you will, but promo sounds a little less weird in my mind for some reason. So this is another example where I needed to visually communicate a story. And in this particular case, I wanted to tell the story through the lens of 4 real people in my community that I've worked with and what they've benefited from their time in my community and inside the eLearning Designers Academy. And so just like I did with the TechSmith video, I scripted it out in a story style format, and then I started sketching out my ideas. So I'm going to go through this a little bit quickly for the sake of time, so because you kind of already understand the concept. So let me start here. Meet Megan, Jacob, Candace, and Molly, a former teacher, a new instructional designer, a freelancer, and an online equestrian horse teacher turned video course creator and educator. Horse sound. Well, okay then. So these are my sketches, and these are the real sketches that I sketched out when I was planning this. So I have 4 characters. They're all at their computers. The last one is Molly. She's the equestrian horse trainer. So there's the horse there, the horse sound. They all look weird. And then we have that horse sound there at the end, right? So then we move on to the next one. Although they each come from different backgrounds, they all wanted to build their skills and grow their careers to become better instructional designers and e-learning developers, all without the messy gimmicks, toxic positivity, magical thinking, fake promises that are constantly shut out by those wannabe influencers and gurus. So in this example, like that first half of that paragraph, I thought, okay, I'll do some close-up shots of each of the 4 characters, and then I have some shots of some ridiculous characters that, in my mind, represent what a furu is, a fake guru, right? That's your new term for today. All right, so we'll move on from there. And that's how they each found the e-learning designers academy, the all-in-one platform for new instructional designers and e-learning developers. So that short sentence right there, I have 3 sticky notes. So we have my logo. That's at least my really awful attempt at my logo. A shot of the e-learning designers academy community, and then some text, the all-in-one platform, blah, 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 blah. Inside the e-learning designers academy, we help people grow their careers by focusing on the one thing that actually makes a difference, building actual skills. So I'm going to show a bunch of heads of the different community members, and then we move on to each student. So that's how Megan used our free resources and design challenges, the blah, 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 blah. So I think I'll show Megan with some things happening in the community. That's how Jacob used our on-demand courses to learn how to build e-learning that drives business results. So there's Jacob. He's going to be doing things around the community. How Candace used our ongoing discussions and community to grow her network and build her freelance business. So Candace is doing things around the community. And how Molly used our hands-on cohort to take her passion for teaching about horses and apply it in a new way. Molly with her horses doing crazy things there, right? So shots of each character. And they were all able to do this while being guided by an industry practitioner with nearly 2 decades worth of real-world experience. Yeah, that's me. So a picture of me, and then this made them feel supported, confident, capable, and able to grow their careers on their own terms. So ending with all of them. The e-learning designers academy, where new e-learning developers and instructional designers grow together, right? So that's this like 1.5-minute long script with each of these sticky notes, right? And so at the end of it, I have like a rough storyboard of what I want to have visualized. So just like I did with the Snagit example, I took these sticky notes and I animated them together with some scratch audio. So let's watch the prototype and then I'll show you the final version. Meet Megan, Jacob, Candace, and Molly, a new instructional designer, a former teacher, a freelancer, and an online equestrian horse teacher turned video course creator and educator? Okay then. Although they each come from different backgrounds, they all wanted to build their skills and grow their careers to become better instructional designers and e-learning developers, all without the messy gimmicks, toxic positivity, magical thinking, and fake promises that are constantly shelled out by those wannabe influencers and gurus. And that's how they each found the e-learning designers academy, the all-in-one platform for new instructional designers and e-learning developers. Inside the e-learning designers academy, we help people grow their careers by focusing on the one thing that actually makes a difference, building tangible skills. And that's how Megan used our on-demand courses to learn how to design performance-based e-learning that drives business results. How Jacob used our free resources and design challenges to apply his existing teaching experience to the world of instructional design. How Candace used our ongoing discussions and community to grow her network and freelance business. And how Molly used our hands-on cohort and coaching program to take her passions for teaching people online about horses and apply it in a totally new way. And they were all able to do this while being guided by an industry practitioner with nearly 2 decades worth of real-world experience. Yeah, that's me. And this made them feel supported, confident, capable, and enabled to grow their skills and careers on their own terms. The e-learning designers academy, where new instructional designers and e-learning developers grow together. All right. So that was the scratch audio with the sticky notes, right? Doesn't seem that exciting, right? So let me show you how that got animated into the final version. So we're going to watch it one more time. Stick with me here. This one's more exciting. Meet Megan, Jacob, Candace, and Molly, a new instructional designer, a former teacher, a freelancer, and an online equestrian horse teacher turned video course creator and educator?
Okay then. Although they each come from different backgrounds, they all wanted to build their skills and grow their careers to become better instructional designers and e-learning developers, all without the messy gimmicks, toxic positivity, magical thinking, and fake promises that are constantly shelled out by those wannabe influencers and gurus. And that's how they each found the eLearning Designers Academy, the all-in-one platform for new instructional designers and e-learning developers. Inside the eLearning Designers Academy, we help people grow their careers by focusing on the one thing that actually makes a difference, building tangible skills. And that's how Megan used our on-demand courses to learn how to design performance-based e-learning that drives business results. How Jacob used our free resources and design challenges to apply his existing teaching experience to the world of instructional design. How Candace used our ongoing discussions and community to grow her network and freelance business. And how Molly used our hands-on cohort and coaching program to take her passions for teaching people online about horses and apply it in a totally new way. And they were all able to do this while being guided by an industry practitioner with nearly 2 decades worth of real-world experience. Yeah, that's me. And this made them feel supported, confident, capable, and enabled to grow their skills and careers on their own terms. The eLearning Designers Academy, where new instructional designers and e-learning developers grow together.
All right. So that's a good example how we went from script to sticky note visualization, if you will, to the final version. And that's a good example where that entire thing, from beginning to end, was animated 100% in Camtasia. No other After Effects, no other plugins. It was literally basic animations and behaviors in Camtasia. And that's what we're going to look at in the second half. Obviously, we're not going to be able to do that whole video, but we're going to do parts of it so you can understand some of those basic techniques of how we make that happen. All right. So here's what we're going to finish up with in my last 5 minutes. And this part I'll go through quickly, and feel free to reach out to me after the fact. My filming and production for video, right? So obviously there's a lot that goes into the video content that I create for YouTube, a lot of equipment for what you're seeing right now, right? And I just want to walk through a little bit of what I have here for my filming setup. My filming setup has really evolved over the years, and there's this, when you, like I said at the beginning, when you do video work, there's kind of this obsession of mastering your audio, your video, your lighting, all of this stuff. And mine has definitely evolved over the years. It's been this constant pursuit of trying to figure out, how do I perfect the way my video looked on camera. And so last year I decided to completely revamp my office, and this was the source of inspiration. I wanted some wood panels and some bright colors and some natural elements. And that's ultimately what I landed on with what you're seeing here, right? So I just wanted to walk through all of the equipment I use, primarily because I want to demonstrate what all goes into it, but then provide you some alternatives. If you're looking to get started, you don't have to spend literally thousands of dollars like I did. So, this is an example of what you might see from the camera with my setup, obviously at a different angle. This is what I see from where I'm sitting right now with my teleprompter and my bookshelves and my microphone and my monitor over here. But like I said, there are 3 priorities that you're trying to accomplish if you're doing any sort of live action video: your audio quality, your lighting quality, and your video quality, right? You want those 3 things to work together so that you show up, as best as you possibly can for your audience, right? So for me, I use a lot of different stuff. So I have these 2 large, newer lights here. This one up here is my key light. I have a little bit of a fill light up here in front of me here. Those are mounted to my ceiling. That's 180, that's 160. Then over here behind me, I have 2 lights up here, these RGB lights that give a little backlight. There's a little bit of blue on me here. Those are about $200 each. I have another fill light back here. That's another flapjack light. And then in terms of my camera, I'm using a Canon EOS 90D. That's $1,000 just for the camera. And then another $600 for the lens that allows me to have a good shallow depth of field that makes my background a little bit blurry, right? And then, the rig here, I have a camera slider that I don't really use all that often. I use it for some other video stuff. It makes the camera go back and forth. That's really nice and motorized. That's $320. And then I have my teleprompter here. I use an Elgato prompter. It's a great plug and play prompter. That's $280, right? And then I have my teleprompter app that projects it up there like an extra monitor. And I have my microphone, my Shure $280 microphone. I have spent, almost $4,000 on all my video equipment, right? And that doesn't even include the computer and the desk and all of the other stuff. It can be expensive if you want to do the stuff at the level at which a lot of people try to do it, but it doesn't have to be expensive, right? So, if you wanted to get started, you can buy, and camera technology has come so far nowadays. You can get something like an Elgato Facecam Pro. It's a plug and play USB webcam, but it's 4K. It gives you that shallow depth of field. It uses software to do that. That might be the most expensive thing that you buy if you want a higher end webcam. If you want to get a microphone, but you don't want to buy one of these expensive ones, you can get a $49 USB Blue Snowball. That's great for audio recording and for YouTube content. That's a perfectly fine microphone. I used that for years and years and years. And then in terms of lighting, you can get a simple 3-point lighting kit for 150 bucks off Amazon, right? And between those three things, like you have enough to accomplish those three priorities: the video, the lighting, and the audio, to at least get you started. And at the end of the day, like all of this stuff that I just showed you, like if I'm being really honest, it's mostly about the vanity of the video creator, right? They want to feel good about how they're showing up on camera. Your audience does not necessarily care that you show up looking pretty and well lit. They care that they can hear what you're saying and that the message of what you're delivering is adding value, right? So if anything, focus on that stuff first. The vanity stuff can come secondary to that, outside of the audio. Like you want the audio to be good, right? All right. We are at the top of the hour. That took the whole hour. All right. So I know we have a 15-minute break. If I don't know, if Jason, if you're okay with this, if we want to answer some questions during that 15 minutes, if people want to stick around, and then we can do like 5-10 minutes of questions and I could take a quick bio break, and then we can jump into our session 2.
Yeah, Tim. This was awesome. There was a few questions that came in, just a few. We were able to
Sure.
source your video that you created walking through your tech setup, and then you were able to bookend it with an even greater display of that. So that answered a lot of questions. I'm going to ask some general questions, and then yeah, definitely take a break. Tony was asking early on, when you were going through the slide preparation and the creation of the slides, do you record your audio per slide, per topic, or do you go for it all at once? Do you just hit record and go, or do you do it in sections?
When I'm doing video, usually it's just the whole thing. So when I'm recording, yeah, it's usually the whole thing. The only exception is like if I was doing that, like the script the opening and then wing it, I might script the opening and the closing because that's all scripted. I will script that and record that once, and then I'll record the meat part, the middle part of it separately. But more often than not, I'm doing a whole go of it, and I will. If I make a mistake, then I just rewind the teleprompter and I keep delivering it until it's good. So sometimes my recordings, if it's a 5-minute video, I might end up with like 20 minutes of recording because I'm going back and rereading something until it comes out the way I want it to, and then it just all gets fixed in the editing process.
Gotcha. Okay, that's clear. We appreciate that. On the heels of that, Jen was asking, on average, how long does your entire video production process take? People are saying like for a 20-minute video, how long do you take in the entire production process? Or for those quick 5-minuters, what is
Yeah.
your average time? I
I
know
mean,
it's hard to.
the more animated the video, the more time it takes. The promo video was, if I'm like I couldn't figure out the hours, but like it was several weeks because it was the scripting of it, and then I went and filmed with those people, and then the editing, like the actual editing. I don't know. I'm one of those people where I'm a quick editor and I have a very clear vision and I'm obsessive compulsive about it, and so I'll work for hours and hours and hours until 10 o'clock at night editing it. That was maybe a day and a half or 2 days worth of animating and editing it. But if it's just like one of my, hey, let me show you how to do this in PowerPoint, I can
Mhm.
record and edit that in 2.5 hours, only because it's, one of the things we didn't get a chance to talk about is like establishing a repeatable process. So I have a very repeatable process where I know exactly what I need to do on the pre-production part of it, and then I know exactly what I need to do in the editing part of it. So it's a little bit quicker.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Let's go with one more question, and then we'll take our quick break here.
Okay.
Rebecca was asking, a lot of people were commenting on the teleprompter. We got all that information. She says, what are the sticky notes that you use? And I don't know if it was the visual of the sticky notes.
Sticky
Yeah,
notes.
standard post-it, right? It's they're
Yeah.
all over my monitor too.
But what you saw was just like me. I take pictures of the sticky notes and then I bring it into the computer. So there's just sticky notes, like literal sticky notes.
Practical application. Love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, folks, Tim has gone through 1 hour straight of incredible information and a lot of the questions you were asking, but how did he make that video? Those animations are amazing. We're going to get into that next. So at this point, we're going to say, see you in a few minutes, Tim. We'll kick back in about quarter after the hour. So maybe like 12 minutes from now, give everybody a quick take break. Tim's going to pop off. We'll stay on. We'll try and answer some questions as well. Otherwise, at about quarter after the hour, if that's enough time for you, Tim, we'll
Yeah, oh
step
yeah.
in the next session.
Okay, I'll see you all in a few minutes.
Excellent. Thanks, Tim. So we'll answer some general questions that have come in as well. I know someone was asking, is Tim a solo creator? As in he creates all of his content and edits his own videos? Yeah, Tim runs his own show. There's not a production team behind him. It's just the skill set that he's developed over the years, Camtasia, his actual setup in his home office. I can't even say office. It's definitely a studio. Absolutely. So we are going to start the next session. I think it's time to stop my screen share yet again. Tim, everybody's really excited to see how the sausage is made, so to speak. The fluidity of your animations, and people are still blown away that that isn't all Camtasia, and I can tell people unequivocally that is all Camtasia, and we're excited to see session number 2 of exactly how you put these together. So take it away
All
when
right.
you are ready, my friend.
Let's do it. I have a lot to share in this second session. So I'm going to be going fast. I'm going to try and cover as much as I can. So remember, it's being recorded. You can always go back and watch the recording. All right. So I'm going to explain as I go along, though. So, all right. So the first thing that I'm going to be sharing, I'm putting a link to the YouTube channel, this particular YouTube channel. Let me share my screen here, and then I'll give you a quick overview of what I'm going to be showing in this first video. Make sure I'm sharing everything properly. Let me open up chat over here and participant panel. Okay, we got all the things. Okay. Are you all seeing Camtasia? Yes.
We
Thumbs up.
are.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you so much, Jason. All right. So this first thing I'm going to show you, this is the question I oftentimes get asked is like, how do you create your videos? And it's usually on a video that looks something like this, right? Where I might have me talking, and then I might do something like this. You see this little transition right here where now it's talking head and I'm doing a demo in the screen. And then sometimes I will, I'll go to full screen and then back to me and then full screen, right? So this is a good example of something that is all done in Camtasia. Now, as I go through this, I'm making some assumptions here that you all kind of know the basics of the Camtasia interface. If not, the folks at TechSmith have so many great tutorials to learn some of those. So, I'll be skipping over some basic stuff, but like I said, bookmark this. You can watch the recording after you learn some of the basics, okay? So I'm going to close out of this and I'm going to open up essentially what I get in Camtasia when I am recording. Like after I'm done recording, what am I editing with, right? And so here's my timeline down here, and here's my video of me doing the opening. So this is a good example where I showed earlier where this video right here is me doing the opening, the scripted opening, and then here's the middle part where I'm doing the demo. And so it's that script it and wing it combination, right? So the first thing that I always do is I always take time to sync my audio and make sure everything's aligned. So I record with this external webcam, I record with this microphone, and my audio is always slightly off, And so one of the things that I always do when I'm starting the record of a video, and if you're just using like a regular USB microphone and a USB camera, you probably won't have this issue. But if you're using more high-end stuff, you oftentimes will see people do this. I'll play this part of the video here at the beginning. Okay. Testing. So I do this clap, right? What I'm doing there is I'm creating a loud noise that I can use to sync my audio and my video together, right? So in this example, this track is my video and my audio as one track. So I always come in here and I separate my audio and video. So it separates the audio feed from the video feed, and now I have two separate things, right? And I use this to sync it up. So I'm going to zoom all the way in here. Here's where I make the clap sound, that peak right there, but you'll notice I don't actually clap till right there, right? So I'm going to move this on down and sync that. Now it's synced, right? I'll group that, and that's taken care of. And I'm going to come down here to my screen recording stuff, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. So when you record your screen in Camtasia, when you're recording your screen, your audio, and your video, this is what it gives you, right? Here's the screen recording. Here's my video recording. These are two separate objects on the timeline, right? And they're stacked on top of one another. But the same thing is true. I need to sync my audio with my video. So I'm going to first start by making my video much bigger so I can at least see myself here. That's on this track here. And just like I did previously, I'm going to right click, separate my video and audio, zoom in here. And there's the peak where I make the clap sound in the audio right here. And here's my video, and I'm going to see to when I actually clap right there. There's the clap. Physical clap, not the other type of clap. And then I'll group that there. All right. So now that's all synced up together, right? I know it's Friday and I turned 40, so I'm allowed to get away with those sorts of jokes, you know? Okay. So we have my opening and we have my my video here with my screen recording sitting behind it. I'm gonna come back to that. So when it comes to opening, editing the opening and closing, usually when I'm recording, if you want to see a little bit of behind the scenes, I record multiple times until I get a take that I feel confident with. So we'll just watch some of it.
Hey there, folks. Tim Slade here from the eLearning Designers Academy. You know, if you're like me, I used to be just
And then
horrible.
right there, I was like, I'm not happy with where this is going. And then we'll move to the next take.
Hey there, folks. Tim Slade here from the eLearning Designers Academy. You know, if you're like me, I used to be a horrible visual designer and graphic.
All right. So I'm not going to make us watch the whole thing, but I'm going to go through all the takes. Usually for me, it's the final take that's usually the good one. So I think that's this one. Let's see here.
Hey there, folks. Tim Slade here from the eLearning Designers Academy. You know, if you were like me when I was first getting started, I used to
I'll pause it there. I think that's going to be the take. So now I'm going to zoom in on my timeline here. And this is the one I'm going to have. So I'll just clip the clip here. I'm going to select it. I'll use this button here to split the clip. And I don't need any of this stuff before, so I'm getting rid of that. And I'll come back out. I'm going to bring this all the way back to the beginning of my timeline here. And let's just focus in on editing this bit. So I'll come back to the beginning. We're going to play it here.
Hey there, folks. Tim Slade here from the eLearning Designers Academy. You know, if you were like me when I was first getting started, I used to be a horrible visual designer and graphic designers. It's one of those skills that, you know, just...
Okay. So we're not going to watch this completely, but I'm going to jump to this part. You'll notice there's a little dead space here. So let's see what happened. What's going on here?
That's it. There are no other shortcuts besides, I don't know, outsourcing all of your visual design work to an actual graphic designer or...
Okay, so I fumbled over my words, so I'm rewinding my teleprompter.
And your own e-learning development projects. Well, you know, here's the harsh truth. The only way you can become a better visual designer...
Okay. So there's a break here. Now, how am I going to edit that together to make it feel smooth? So
the skills in your own e-learning development projects. Well, you know...
So right here where I say, well, that's the harsh truth. Let's go here.
Well, you know...
Okay. I'm going to cut that there. And here's the mistake part. And I'm going to use a jump cut to make it look seamless. So I'll come back here. Let's find where I say that in my audio.
Gosh, here's...
I'll go back here a little bit more.
I'm a better visual designer and hopefully apply those skills to your own e-learning development projects. Well, gosh, here
it is, the well. Okay, so I'm going to cut that right there. Okay, let me zoom out. Here's the part I don't need. Delete, bring this back forward. Now a jump cut is an editing technique that allows you to kind of hide these edits, right? If I were to just leave this as is, it would look like something like this.
The skills to your own e-learning development projects. Well, you know,
you would notice the cut, right? When I do a jump cut, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the video clip. I'll come to my properties panel and I'm just going to scale it up a little bit. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger as if it zoomed in. Usually I do like 120. I'll put it there. And now let's play this here.
And hopefully apply those skills to your own e-learning development projects. Well, you know, here's the hard...
There's something about the jumping in and zooming in or zooming back out. It just hides the edit more cleanly and it makes it feel more fluid, right? So when it comes to the introduction part of it, I will go through and do all of that. Let me go through here, find
my computer, and you'll see that I have PowerPoint opened.
Okay, so here's that transition. This part's the closing part of the video. I'm not going to worry about that here.
And the best part is it doesn't cost you any money. It just costs you some time and some fun in PowerPoint. So let's jump into it.
All right, so that's where I'm transitioning into my demonstration, right? And then the rest of this is the closing. I don't need that for today. So I'm going to cut my clip here and be done with that, right? So let's come back down here. I'm going to bring this all over here and bring that to the beginning here. This is where I'm going to transition into my video demonstration. And as I edit these clips, you're going to notice I'm editing both my video, the stuff you see of me, and the screen recording back here, which you can't see right now. We'll come to that here in a moment. I'm editing those together because those were recorded simultaneously, right? So I don't want to get those out of sync from one another. So when I'm talking about something, I want to make sure my mouse cursor is going in the right place, right? So here's where I say, let's jump into it. So let's jump into it. Synced my audio again. That's the second clip. All right, so here I am on my computer, and you can see. So that's where I'm winging the rest of it. So I'm going to select these, and I'm just going to drag this to cut it to that point here. And this might be another instance where I might use a jump cut to make this a little bit smoother, right? So if I were to come back here, we have that jump cut skills here where we zoom in. Learning development projects. Well, here's the harsh truth. So let's see where I can put another jump cut. Outsourcing all of your visual design work to an actual graphic designer. Maybe I'll do a jump cut there. Sometimes you have these long pauses and a jump cut can help make that a little bit more fluid. So I'm just going to cut that, bring that here. This is going to go back to the regular size, 100%. So that's where I'm zoomed in. Actual graphic designer. I mean, that's fine, but it's not a lot of fun. And no, you can't do it all with AI, despite how many times I see people attempt it. So don't go there with me today. It's kind of like learning how to bake a cake. So maybe that's another place. Like usually where I'll put jump cuts to is like where I'm transitioning an idea. So go there with me today. So I'm talking about it's like baking a cake. So maybe I'll do a jump cut there and zoom in. Now I'll show you why this is going to be helpful in making our transition a little bit better down here when we go to the video. Okay, so we stay here. I'm talking about baking a cake. Let me drag this down here, blah, 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 blah. And then we're going to move into, all right, let me show you how I do this. Let me bring this back over here. Some fun in PowerPoint. So let's jump into it. All right, so here. Okay, so you said that jump cut just made that smoother. Now this is where we're going to get into the animation part of it, where I'm animating from me being full screen to that video in a video type format. And this is where we're going to use some custom animations. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to animate my video going to the side here. And this is where we're going to use basic animations in Camtasia, the animations tab over here. There are really there's a lot of different animations in Camtasia, but they're really fit into 3 buckets. You have animations, which I'll explain these here in a moment. We have transitions, which is like a fade transition you could do between clips, and there's some effects. I rarely, when in doubt, fade in and out. I rarely use the other transitions. And then the other ones are behaviors. Behaviors are a type of animation that are super powerful that most people, I think, are intimidated by and don't know what to do with. We're going to focus on the animations first. There's a lot of different ones here where it changes different parameters of the clip. You can change opacity. You can make things tilt left and right, scale things up and down. You can even do motion paths. 9 times out of 10, like 90% of the time, I'm just doing a custom animation. It allows you to have complete control over what you're doing. So what I want to have happen is I want this to go from full screen to me smaller over here on the side of the screen. So I'm just going to drag this animation here. And in the world of video editing, this type of animation is usually known as a keyframe. And there's nothing about the word keyframe that makes any sense in terms of what it does, but essentially it adds this arrow here to the clip. You see this arrow here? Essentially what it's going to do is it's going to animate any changes I make between the clip from this side of the animation to this side of the animation. So any changes I make in terms of the positioning, the size, the cropping, the scale, anything like that, it will just animate the difference between those two. Okay, it may not make sense, but just watch me here. So here it says, let's watch it here. All right, so here I am on my computer. So from this point, I want it to animate to show my computer. So I'm going to put this here. This is going to animate it in. So now I just put my playhead down here, and any changes I make to my clip will get animated. So in this example, I'm going to scale this down a little bit. I'm going to make myself smaller. I'll put myself over here. And then maybe what I'll do, I have to move Camtasia down here a little bit because Zoom's in the way. Maybe I'll crop myself. So I'm going to crop myself to be like this. And if I can get that right, All right, so there I am down here. Oops. I always make this mistake when I'm stuck in crop mode. I have to go back to the cursor here and put myself over here. Now let me show you what happens here between that. Now as I drag the playhead, watch what happens to the video. See how it animates there? It just animated that for me because I just changed the parameters from point A to point B, right? And down here in the timeline, I can adjust the speed of it. So if I come down here, I can just make this, I can make it go really slow. Like watch this.
So here I am on my computer, and you can see I'm
It
using
goes really slow, or I can make it go really fast, right? I have a number that I use. So if I right click, I can do duration, and I always do 0.75. I don't know why, it just works. That's my number. 3/4 of a second is my number. And
so here I am on my computer.
whoop, went smaller, right? Now, one of the other things you'll have to do too, if you right click on the animation, there's this animation easing here. I always usually like to have it animate exponentially in and out. That just makes it smoother. There's a few other ones in here, like bounce. Let's see what that looks like.
So here I am on my computer, and you can see
bounces, right? Yeah. I mean, you can do that, but let's do spring.
So here I am on my computer.
Yeah. I mean, that would be exciting, but let's just do exponentially so it makes it smooth, right?
So here I am on my computer,
and so I did that. Now, what are we going to do with this thing over here, the screen recording? Well, usually what I like to do is I like to make this really small over here, and I'm going to make the opacity of it 0%. Okay, and you're like, what the heck are you doing, Tim? Why would you do that? Don't we need to see that? Well, yeah, but I want that to animate in too. So I set it to 0% opacity. I made it really small in the corner. Now I'm going to add another animation. Let me add a custom animation to this clip. Put it right in the same spot. It aligns it like that. And now I'm on the other end of that animation, that keyframe. Any changes I make to it will be animated. So in this case, I'll bring the opacity back up. I will make this much bigger, and let's see how that animates. So there's my screen recording. There I am. Let's play this, zoom out.
in PowerPoint. So let's jump into it. All right, so here I am on my computer, and you can see
that,
I'm
like,
using
I don't
PowerPoint.
know, that panning effect. I'll play that one more time.
Let's jump into it. All right, so here I am on my computer, and you
Right? It's sexy. It just works, right? That's how I do that. Now there's a lot of other things that I can add to it. So once I've done the basic animation, then that's when I start going and adding in accoutrements, if you will, or additional little things to the clip. And this is where we're going to get into some basics of the behaviors, which I'm going to show in the next thing. But let me show you an example of something that I usually add to my clips, right? I actually have to open up Adobe Illustrator because I have a whole library of graphics that I use that I forgot to leave in this project. So excuse me as I go find these. I have all these brand graphics that I use for my company. And so, like, for example, I have these little hoopy rings, right? So let's say I want this blue one. I'll just copy that. This is one of the things I love about Camtasia is I get to copy like a vector graphic, and I can just paste it in here, and it pastes it as SVG directly into Camtasia. That makes it easy. So if I want some like extra elements, I might put this back here. And if I want it behind everything, I'll add a track below, and I'll move that down here, and I'll put that down here, right? And this might extend the whole length of my clip. And maybe what I want that to do is I want that to just slowly fade in when we make this transition, right? So in that example, I might go to transitions, and we have a lot of transitions here. I always find myself scrolling through here, but one of the things that you can do is you can actually favorite certain things. So if you don't want to find the transition, if you right click, you can add it to your favorites. So I have my favorites up here where I have my fade transition, and I'll throw that in on there. And then I'll just have that fade in as that.
Let's jump into it. All right, so here I am on my computer, and you can see
and then it's
I
there
am
on the
using
clip and it's in the
PowerPoint. Now,
background.
before we jump,
I might add other graphics as well if I want something hanging out there around me. All right. A few final things that I might do with this as I'm editing this, like for example, my cursor down here is really tiny. So usually what I'll do is I'll come in here and I'll make the cursor a little bit larger so people can see it. That's one of the cool things that when you're recording in Camtasia, it automatically does that. There's a whole host of new cursor features that they recently put into Camtasia. So if you go to cursor effects, you can change the color, you can magnify, all of that stuff. One of the new things that I've been playing around with is this kinetic cursor. And it adds a really cool effect where I don't even know how to describe it. I'll make the cursor really big so you can kind of see it. But as the cursor moves, it I don't know, it looks really snappy and cool.
Into this, a couple things I want to mention. I prefer, when it comes to practicing visual design stuff, especially for e-learning.
Fast forward to when I'm actually using my mouse here. I'm just talking at PowerPoint here. Here we go. Here's some mouse movements.
Was to effectively reverse engineer other people's visual design work. You know,
so you can play with all that, right? Those are some of those features that I do there, right? So that's a basic of how I do that. And then if I were to, just as an example, just for the sake of it, let's say I wanted to go back to full screen, or maybe I wanted to move myself off the screen and bring this to full screen, right? This is where I can use more animations. So let's say here I wanted this to be full screen and me to go off the screen. Again, animations. So I'll come in here, add a custom animation to myself, add a custom animation to the screen recording. For myself, I might just, I might just send myself off the slide. I'm still here, but I'm over here. And then for the screen recording, maybe I'll go really big, like this. Fill up the screen. Let me fit that in there. And let's see what that looks like. Let me make this smaller.
All right, so here I am on my computer, and you can see I am using PowerPoint. Now, before we jump into this, a couple things I want to mention. I prefer, when it comes to practicing visual design
now full screen, and I can use animations. I can toggle back and forth. I can bring myself back in, bring myself back out. So in this example, the animation that I use a lot of time is restore. This one's a little bit easier because restore just reverses what you did in the previous animation. So if I want to bring myself back in, I'll just throw that on there, and then it'll bring me back in. I'll throw that one down here. Let's see what that looks like. I prefer, when it comes to practicing visual design stuff, especially for e-learning, I love practicing and using PowerPoint. So I can toggle back and forth as I'm doing my explanation. And then when I'm ready to go back to full screen, then I can just do another custom animation. So let's say I'm ready to go back for me being, all over the screen. I can just animate this down here. And I'm just going to do the opposite of what I just did at the beginning. So maybe this is going to go back to being really tiny. The opacity will go back to 0. Oh, that was the mouse cursor. Shouldn't have done that. Hold on. The clip will go back to 0 opacity. And then for myself, maybe I'll just make myself bigger and uncrop myself. Again, it's going to automatically animate all of these changes for me. I can get myself there, zoom back in. Let me just put myself back in the middle. Oops, hold on. I just made a little oopsie. Ignore what I'm doing. Okay, now let me zoom back out so I can actually crop myself. I accidentally made an edit to the group. Ignore that. That was not supposed to be happening there. That's okay. All right, uncrop myself, move myself back. All right, and then that's what this will look like. So
I love practicing and using PowerPoint, and I encourage you to do the same if you're able to. You can use whatever visual design tool you have access to, whether it's
so that's a good example of, like, really quickly how I animate those sorts of videos. And like I said, I already have a preset style for how I do it, so it's really easy for me to like knock that out. I can, like I said, I can edit that video together in like an hour. The hardest part was scripting and filming the opening and the closing, and then the middle part, especially if I'm doing the back and forth stuff, that's most of my editing work, right? Now, before I go to the next type of video where we talk about behaviors, one thing I want to share real quickly, I'm gonna do a recording here. I'm gonna click record. Now, you may not want to do all of the manual animations here, right, that I just did there. One of the really cool features that's available in Camtasia that they launched, I think last year, is Camtasia Rev, which allows you to, it automates a little bit of that for you if you don't want to do all that animation work. So let's say I'm doing a screen recording. I have my video here. I'm going to record my audio. Let's see if I can choose the right screen. Maybe I'm recording. Here's the Zoom interface, the other screen, right? So I have the Rev option turned on here, Camtasia Rev. So I'm going to hit record here. You're gonna see it's gonna count down here. Let me record some stuff. So I'm over here recording. Here's my YouTube channel. Visit the eLearning Designers Academy. Here's the participant panel. Here's some cool things I want to show you. Okay, cool. I recorded that, right? So now let me stop recording. Now, when you have the Camtasia Rev setting turned on, it brings you to this screen. And this essentially is automating a lot of the same stuff I just showed you, where you can choose different layouts, where you can choose where to put your face, where to put the camera. It can even remove the background for you. You can do something like this. There's all sorts of settings like that. You can change the background if you wanted to. So sometimes I have like this gradient background. You have different effects, and it's just going to automate some of that. And then you can click here, Edit in Camtasia, and it's going to automatically have established and applied these effects. But you can edit everything. You can move yourself around. You can do all those animations. So it's a quicker way where you can kind of get that set up. It's, you know, it still requires a little work if you want to customize it to the level at which I did it, but it's a really great way to start if you're wanting to do something like that. So I have to mention that. All right. Okay, we're going quick here because the next one's going to take a little bit more time. This one's going to be a bit more intricate. So those are basic animations, right? Those keyframes. So let me close this. I'm not going to save it. Yeah, I'm good to not save it. Okay. The next one I'm going to show you is this video. I'll put a link to this in chat. This was the demo video or the promo video that I showed you earlier. And I want to show you, we're going to play a little part of it, and I just want to show you how complex the timeline is for this particular video. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out as much as I can on this timeline so you can see the complexity of everything. Oh, this was my, hold on. Let's go to the final video, not the demo video. 1 second. This particular video where we did, hey, meet these people, right? Let me make this big. I'm going to bring this down. Let me make the timeline really big. I'm going to zoom all the way out. I'm going to zoom all the way out here. So this was a really, really complex timeline in order to make this animation happen where we had this video.
Meet Megan, Jacob, Candace, and Molly, a new instructional designer, a former teacher, a freelancer, and an online equestrian horse teacher turned video course creator and educator.
Okay, I'm going to edit that part. We're going to edit that first 10 seconds. The meet Megan, Jacob, Candace, and Molly, and we're going to have that mouse cursor go in and how I make that happen, all right? So let me close this. Let me open up what I have here. Now, let me show you what we have here in this sample. Let me zoom back in here, make my timeline look a little bit more normal. All right, what I have here is I have just the audio. I have the background music and my recorded audio here. So I'll just play part of it. There's nothing on the slide besides audio.
Meet Megan, Jacob, Candace, and Molly, a new instructional designer, a former teacher, a freelancer, and an online equestrian horse teacher turned video course creator and educator.
Okay, that's what we're going to animate. So in this particular case, with this project, I went out and I traveled and I actually recorded with all these people. So this is going to be a little bit of some live action video editing with some animation stuff too. So let's start by getting all of the video that I want on, and then we'll animate it. So here in my clip, my media bin, I have all of the different clips and graphics that I need. So let's start. Here's Megan. So I'll throw her on there. I'm going to mute the audio. I don't need that on this. So I'm going to silence that, right click, silence audio. And here's a little bit of her standing there, and we're doing some awkward filming, trying to get that right? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to crop it a little bit to make it be the aspect ratio that I want, right? So I'm going to put it here. I was kind of going for like, I wanted it to look like a phone, like aspect ratio, if you will. And oops, I'm going to put that right back there. So that's cropped. I'll put that there. Okay, that's the first clip. So it's meet Megan, Jacob, Candace, and Molly, I think. So let's get Jacob. Here's Jacob's video. Throw him on there. And let's silence that audio too. And let's find the part that I want there. So there's Jacob. I'm moving around. We're filming. All right, I'm gonna crop him as well. Now, this is a good example where I'm actually gonna use Megan's video as a guide because everything snaps to the guide and I want it to be exactly the same. So I'm gonna make him fit right over Megan's video like that and use that as a guide to crop his video, right? Okay, there's Jacob's video. Okay, we're good there. Let me go back here. Sorry, Zoom got in the way, so I have to move that out of the way. So he said, meet Megan, Jacob, Candace. Let's find Candace's video. Here's Candace's video. Throw her on there. And here's her video. Again, I don't need the audio, so I'll right-click silence the audio. And let's find the part of the clip that worked. We were going all over this office environment where we were filming. Yeah, that works right there. Okay. So I'll just bring this over. Okay, and let's crop her down. Again, I'm going to use Jacob and Candace, or Jacob and Molly as a guide. So I'll bring her down. Maybe I'll make her a little bit bigger. And I'm going to crop her as well. We're not doing any animations yet, just getting the video on the screen. Okay. Oop, let's move her, change to my regular mouse cursor, move her over there. And then let's get some Molly here. Molly has her horses. This was up in Seattle. She has these amazing horses. And I wanted to include them in the video. So we'll find her a good clip. We'll do right here. Okay. So I'm going to use our other clips as a guide as well, bring them down here, come back to Molly, and maybe I'll make Molly much larger because she was much further away. So I'm going to put her there. It's not going to be perfect for today just because this is obviously not the focus of what we're really focusing on, but I need to get it configured. So we'll crop her there, crop her over here, crop her over there, and then I need to move my thing up here so I can get this final crop mark and bring that way down here, right? I know I'm zoomed out really far. Let me zoom back in. Okay, so we have our 4 characters, if you will. And now I need to position them where I want them to be on the screen when they animate in, right? So let me do this real quickly. Let me just clean this up here. Let's listen here. Go back to the beginning.
Meet Megan,
Okay, this is when they're going to start animating in. So let me bring Megan down here. Meet Megan, Jacob, Candace, and Molly. I'm going to cut her clip a little bit because I think the part that I wanted was more over here. Now, obviously, they're not positioned where I want them to be. So this is where I'm going to select all of them. We're going to make them a bit smaller here on the screen. I could spend time like evenly distributing them, all of that stuff. We're going to do it a little rough and dirty. So I'm going to use my cursor like that. They're not perfectly cropped, obviously. Molly's half off the screen. This is where I would really spend a lot of time fine-tuning those little details, right? But like, we're going to pretend that Molly's centered on my clip there, right? But I would obviously spend some time fixing that. Okay, so we have...
Meet Megan, Jacob, Candace, and Molly.
A new instruction, right? This is where we're going to start using behaviors, right? So I established my clip where I want things to be. And the behavior is the other type of animation. Now, I could technically use the previous type of animation I showed you, but that would be really complex because I would have to move them all off the screen, add the animation, and then have them go where I want them to go. Behaviors, on the other hand, they're kind of like animations in PowerPoint. They're like entrance, exit animations, but you also have during animations. I don't know if that makes sense. I'll explain that here in a moment, but think of them as entrance and exit animations, okay? So I'm going to go to the behaviors tab here. Now there's a lot of different behaviors. I will be the first to admit that they're not all, I think the folks at TechSmith did a great job trying to give them logical names. With a lot of these, you just have to play with them to go, what does this animation do? And you'll discover all sorts of cool things that you can do with these animations. Now in this particular case, I think I used the sliding animation to have them slide in. So I'm going to add that sliding animation to all of them simultaneously. So I have all 4 clips selected, and I'm just going to add that sliding animation. And it added it as an effect, okay? And you can see effects on clips. If you click the little arrow down here, you'll see it has the sliding down here. That indicates that that animation is on here. And then if I select a clip, you'll notice these little 3 things here. These are the behaviors. And this is where you can control what happens as the entrance, the during, and the out, okay? Entrance animation, how's it gonna animate during, how's it gonna animate out, okay? Now, I haven't done anything with it. I just added the sliding animation. Let's see what it looks like before I configure it. So I'm gonna go back to the beginning here of the whole thing, and let's just play it and see what they do.
Meet Megan, Jacob, Candace, and Molly,
So
a new instructional designer,
right?
a former teacher, a freelancer,
And you also see they're kind of pulsing,
and
they're
an
fading in
online
and out,
equestrian horse
right?
teacher.
And if we were to go all the way to the end, you would see they're all gonna slide
Become
out
better
on their
instructional
own.
designers and e-learning developers, all without the messy gimmicks, toxic positivity,
There's Megan,
magical
there
thinking,
goes
and
Molly
fake
at the
promises
end,
that
right?
are constantly shelled out by those wannabe.
Okay, so it's sliding. Now, this is where we get into the cool stuff. We get to customize it, right? So we want them to have them slide in. But what I want to do is I actually want them to slide in from the right one at a time, like they're staggered, And I want it to have a little bit of a bouncy effect because I want it to look a little kinetic and snappy. You know what I mean? So this is where I'm going to select all of them. I'll go to the behaviors so I can edit multiple behaviors on multiple objects at one time. So I have them all selected. And I'm going to start with the end. What do I want them to do? Well, I have it sliding. I could change it to the other ones here. So we're going to have it sliding. And I'm going to go down here to the direction. What direction do I want it to do it? Right now it's coming in from the left. In this case, I want it to come in from the right. So I'm going to slide in from the right. And then we have the movement here. The movement is really powerful. This is where you can add a lot of personality to the animation. Right now it's ease in, out, quart. What the heck does that mean? I don't know what it means. I will never know what it means because there's like a whole bunch of these and they have weird words like expo and quint and quad and sign. I don't know what that means. I, I have discovered the one that I use when I want to have a little bit of a bouncy effect. Again, you have to play with them, right? There is a bounce. There's ease in, ease both, smooth, spring. I don't know. I use ease out, back. And what that means is it's going to ease out, but it's going to give it a little bit of a bounce. Okay. So let's watch this. I added all of those. Let's see what that changed. Sliding, ease out, back from the right. Okay.
Meet Megan, Jacob, Candace.
See how they did that? They went, woo, they had a bounce. Okay. Let's play it one more time.
Meet Megan, Jacob, Candace.
Had a little bounce there. Okay. Now, before we adjust the timing of each of those, the during. Okay. By default, the during is the fade in. So that's this fading, and you see how it's pulsing there? They go pulsing. I don't want any of that. So I'm just going to turn off no pulsing animation. And we'll come back to the out here in a moment. Now, in terms of the timing, I want this to happen one after the other, right? So let me go back to the beginning.
Meet Megan, Jacob, Candace.
I don't want them all doing it at once. I want them to come in staggered. So this is where I'm going to just adjust the timing of the clip. So I'm going to zoom in way down here, all the way in. And I'm just going to move these manually. So it's going to be Megan, Jacob, Candace, and Molly. So I'm just going to move Jacob maybe 1, 2, 3 frames down. And then Candace, I'm going to move 1, 2, 3 frames down from Jacob. And Molly, same thing. 1, 2, 3 frames down, right? If you zoom all the way in, each one of these little hash marks represents a frame. Let's see what that looks like. I'm going to zoom out. Let's play that.
Meet Megan, Jacob, Candace, and Molly.
That worked, right? But maybe I want it to be synced with the audio. So let's do that, actually. Let me play that. Let me listen to that.
Meet Megan.
Okay, it said Megan. I'm going to just move her down here. Jacob. I'm going to move him down here. So I'm just literally listening to the audio and pausing the second I hear their name.
Jacob,
Candace comes down here.
Candace, and Molly.
And Molly. I know that's really quick, but once you get accustomed to syncing audio, you'll listen and pause right when you want to hear it. And I'm pausing, hitting the space bar, by the way. So let's see now what that looks like. I spread them out a little bit more.
Meet Megan, Jacob, Candace, and Molly. A new instructional designer,
Okay.
a former teacher.
That's pretty good. Now I can play with that a little bit more and make that smoother, right? Let me hit save. Okay, so I got that basic entrance animation. Now let's start adding some of those additional, what I call accoutrements, right? In the final version of the video, I don't know if I have that open. Let me go back to that and let's see what happens in the final version of the video. This is my demo one. In the final version of the video, I'm gonna bring this way down here. Let's zoom in here and let's go back to the beginning.
Meet Megan, Jacob, Candace, and Molly. A
Okay, so this mouse cursor thing, right?
new instructional designer,
And it's moving and it's zooming in on things.
former teacher, a freelancer, and an online
And
equestrian.
then we have these things popping in. There's a lot happening on the screen, right? Let's do the mouse cursor with these things popping out. This is a mixture of behaviors and some animations, especially with this mouse cursor. Now, this is not like a mouse cursor that I recorded, like as if I was recording my screen. This is a graphic that I'm actually inserting. So I'm gonna go back to my media bin And let's throw in this mouse cursor here. This is just a graphic that I have that I've created. And I'm going to use that graphic. And maybe I want it to, when it says like meet Megan, a teacher, a I'm going to have it fly in and it's going to hover over Megan first, right? And then it'll move over to Jacob and all of that stuff, right? So let me figure out when I want that to animate in, and I'll put that on my timeline here.
Meet Megan, Jacob, Candace, and Molly.
So when it says a new instructional designer, maybe that's when I want that to come in and hover over Megan.
Instructional designer, a former teacher, a free,
and it'll move across the way. Now this is where I'm going to use a behavior, a different type of behavior on the cursor. Again, behavior, entrance, exit animation, right? So I'm going to do a behavior. I did sliding before. With this one, I like using the drifting one for this. I don't know why, it just feels really natural. So I'm just going to drag that to my cursor and let's see what that looks like just as it is.
Candace and Molly, a new instructional designer.
See how it kind of like whoop, comes in from the left there?
A new instructional designer.
We're going to change that slightly. So I'm going to select my cursor, go back to my behaviors. There's the in, the during, the out. I'm going to have it drift. I don't need to change the movement. I'm fine with that. Right now it's moving from the bottom, even though it looks like it's moving from the left. I'm going to have this move in from, let's see what it looks like when it moves in from the right.
Molly, a new instructional designer.
Yeah, like it goes, it swoops over. I like that. Okay. So we added that in there.
A former teacher, a freelancer.
Now, before we move forward, this is where I also want to do some during animation. The during animation, it does a drifting thing where I don't know if you can really see it, but it's kind of moving up and down. One of the during animations I like to do when I'm doing this mouse cursor is I like using the wiggle, and it just adds a little bit of like natural movement. So let's see what that looks like. This is what's going to be happening after it does the entrance animation.
A new instructional designer, a former teacher.
It's very subtle. Let me zoom in here so you can actually see it wiggling.
Molly, a new instructional designer, a former teacher, a freelancer,
ever so slightly. Little things like that add personality to the object, and it's just going to continue wiggling. I could during I can change all sorts of things. Like I can make it shake like crazy. If I did like frequency at like 10, let's see what that looks like.
Instructional designer, a former teacher,
a
like, freelancer.
Oh, it's on crack. We don't want that. We're just going to go back to 1.
Instructional designer, a former teacher.
Okay, there we go, right? Play with it. And a lot of times with these numbers, like the wiggle is a good example. I don't know what nuance or frequency means. I don't know. I'm just going to move these numbers around until it looks good, you know? So the basic wiggle looks good. So I have that all on here. Now let's make the mouse cursor move to each person.
A new instructional designer, a former teacher, a freelancer.
So it's going to move to each one. So we have Megan.
New instructional designer, a former teacher.
So a former teacher goes to Jacob. So this is where now I'm going to combine the behaviors with the animations. So I'm going to use an animation. There's a couple different ones I could do. I could do a motion path if I wanted to do like a curvy thing. In this case, I'm just going to stick with our animations. That's pretty simple here. So I'm going to add that here. Again, the animation is what happens. It changes what happens from one point to another. So in this case, it's going to go from Megan, a new instructional designer, to
a former teacher.
Jacob, a former teacher. So I'm going to make this much shorter because it's making a very small movement. And the mouse cursor is going to go over here to Jacob. So I'm going to just move him over there. And let's see how that looks.
A new instructional designer, a former teacher.
That moved a little fast. This is where I can adjust the timing a little bit.
Designer, a former teacher, a freelancer.
Okay, now let's move to Candace, the freelancer. I'll do the same thing. Put that right here. Make this shorter, about the same duration, so it's more natural, or it's like the other one. Let's see where it happens.
Sure, a freelancer.
Freelancer, maybe right about here. Move that cursor over here, and then
and an online
equestrian horse teacher turned video course creator. Nay, yes, that. Okay, that's going to go over here. Okay. So I'm just adding these keyframe animations, moving the cursor where I want it to go. Let's give it a test and see how it looks so far.
Meet Megan, Jacob, Candace, and Molly, a new instructional designer, a former teacher, a freelancer, and an online equestrian horse teacher turned video course creator and educator.
Okay. And then that's where the big version of Molly and the horse come in, right? I just extended that mouse cursor so it doesn't go off there.
And an online equestrian horse teacher turned video course creator and educator.
And then we have our video. Where is she with the horse? Let's see if I can find it here. That's not the horse. This is kind of the horse. I think I must have used this clip and just made it really, really big. Now that I'm thinking about it. Make this really big. She was nervous in front of the camera. So let's see if I can find her doing her little shoulder shrug. There we go. There we go. So I'm just finding the part that I want. I'll silence the audio. Bring this down here. And let's see how this looks with that clipping to her full screen.
Meet Megan, Jacob, Candace, and Molly, a new instructional designer, a former teacher, a freelancer, and an online equestrian horse teacher turned video course creator and educator? Okay then, right?
So that's that. Now I'm going to add a couple of more really quick things just to show you some additional little elements I might add to something like this, right? So in the final version, I had some icons floating around. So I have those already loaded up here. So, you know, Megan is a new instructional designer. Maybe I'll have a little icon for her. These are icons that I just created in Adobe Illustrator. Jacob is our former teacher. Candace is our freelancer. And we have a horse for Molly. And we have those icons. So I can just start putting these where I want them. I'm gonna select all of them, make them much smaller. And maybe the animation, I want to do something a little bit different with these. Maybe, and I'll just put that up here. Maybe with these, I want them to hinge in. This is a graphic, a style that I use frequently as well. So maybe for each one of these, let me play this.
New instructional designer.
So a new instructional designer, we'll have that animate in.
A former teacher.
We'll have that animate in right here. Former teacher.
A freelancer.
Freelancer, we'll have this animate in down here.
And
then
an online
online equestrian horse teacher there. Obviously, I'm going to extend these to when we go to the full screen with Molly right there. But the behavior for this, if I go back to behavior, so I just added them on there. Right now, they're just going to appear.
Designer, a former teacher, a freelancer, and an online equestrian horse.
That's not exciting. So maybe what I'll do is I'll add a behavior. And this one I'll do is, it's called pop-up. And it's kind of like this hinge. So I'll have it in, I'll have it hinge, and I'll have it hinge from the top. And let's see what that looks like. I don't need any during animation. I don't need it to go out. So I'm going to turn all of those off. It's just an entrance animation. Let's see what that looks like.
Meet Megan, Jacob, Candace, and Molly, a new instructional designer, a former teacher, a freelancer, and an online equestrian horse teacher turned video course creator and educator?
All right. So you see how they like hinged in, you know? All right. I have no idea where we're at with time. Jason, where are we at with time?
You're cranking through it, my friend. I would say you probably have another good 10-ish minutes if you've got time or content.
Okay, let's do this.
All right.
So that's what I planned on showing you. We did a lot. We did the animations. I showed you how I lay out my videos. We did the behaviors. And now, in our last 10 minutes, what do you all want to see? Is there something that you saw in one of my videos that I didn't explain that I could show?
We got questions, Tim. We got questions.
Okay, let's do questions, and I'll leave this open in case I
let's
show anything specific.
Yeah. So no, it's generally around all the editing parts. So let's start with the first one. When you're creating a demonstration and you were doing those jump cuts where you were zooming in on yourself, pulling back out, do you believe those help? There's a lot of debate around jump cuts. At some point they used to be unprofessional. Now they're normal. Like, how does it help you to make jump cuts to get your point across or add emphasis? That was kind of a general question around
People
that.
thought they're unprofessional?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I've never heard of this debate. My thought
yeah.
on jump cuts is like, not only does it help you hide and edit, but you know, for me, when I think of a jump cut, like it's part of the storytelling process in a way. So you will notice that I put jump cuts when I'm changing, when I'm making a specific important point. Sometimes I'll jump cut and zoom in. Like I think it helps elevate my storytelling process personally. So I'm all for them. I think you can have too many jump cuts, right? You have to like be strategic about it. You have to be thoughtful about it, just like with anything. But for me, I think it helps enhance the point that I'm making sometimes.
I agree. I've definitely gone more that direction. It depends on the video style too.
Yeah,
and who's
totally.
the intended audience and all that. General question, you're using a Shure mic. Do you have a particular model of Shure mic that you enjoy for that crisp sound that you're getting? Do you know what model you're using by any
It's
chance?
just the USB one.
Just a standard one, right? It's
It's
like
just
an
the one
M.
that, like, I don't deal with the coaxial cable ones. I don't have time for that, even though it has this. It's just a USB Shure mic. I think they only have one model of that.
Perfect. Um, when you showed your number of tracks, is it normal for a video that you're doing with animations to have that many tracks? Is that an exception? They were kind
Um,
of curious.
like, well, okay. So with this track, I mean, this had 20 track. This had a lot more than 20 tracks. Is this normal? It depends. Like, this is, if I'm being completely honest, this isn't. I wouldn't define this as a clean timeline, you know, like I could go back and clean this up and probably reduce it, but just for the sake of demonstration, like if I were to start ungrouping these tracks, we would probably have like 60, 70 tracks. It's crazy.
Mhm.
So is it normal? I guess it depends on the nature of what you're doing. The with this particular with this particular video, the reason why there's so many tracks is there's a lot of things layered on top of one another. So let me show you an example. So like down here, this is the final version of the video. Um, we have, Megan, Jacob, Candace, Molly. We have Molly with her horse going, oh my goodness. And then this is a good example where I use a transition right here. This is, I think, like a zoom fade transition or something like that. So we have them, blah, 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 blah. That's all of them working. And then I have this thing animate in here where there's like this, it's like a transition, a panel, a blue and white panel animate in. And it's
Mhm.
almost like I've created a whole new stage, like I'm moving to a new scene, and then everything gets stacked on top of there. So there's a lot of layering going on with this, which necessitated a lot of extra tracks. So this is a way more above average video than I think most people would do, and it's not a clean timeline. I could probably reduce it.
Yeah, and clean is relative, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I look at this and it makes sense, but I also think when you're creating, I'm going to use the word intricate, but simple animations, it's easier to have them laid out and move them around and manipulate them as needed, I think, as you have your track laid out
Yeah,
that way.
and the other
So,
thing too that's contributing to this, I'll say this real quickly, like down here, this is the audio, the music. So the length of this video is a minute and a half. The audio I used was only like a minute long. So that's
mhm.
like there's multiple versions of that audio layered on top of one another to create the sound of a continuous track. And so that adds to the tracks. Like there's all these little things that quickly add up to multiple tracks.
Absolutely. Do you ever use the copy and paste animation functionality in Camtasia?
Yep, I
Yeah.
will like if we go back to this, I might spend time adding, like you can actually copy and paste these animations. So I might copy that animation and put it down here, and you can paste it down here. The other thing I'll do a lot is if I'm really fine tuning something, let's say I'm fine tuning what Megan's doing here, and I've added, there's a lot of things I didn't show here with this. Like, for example, visual effects. I'll usually add like a rounded corner to make it the corner rounded, and then I'll also add a drop shadow. And before you know it, you're quickly adding all sorts of extra things to the clip. And so a lot of times what I'll do is I'll configure one and then I'll right click and I might copy the effects, which will copy the animation. I'll copy the properties and then I can start pasting it onto others. It messed up Jacobs. I don't know why, but so yes, the answer is yes in the real world.
Yep, that's the same for us too. I'll throw you a general softball for our kind of last question before we get into our preview of Camtasia Online, and that is when you're sourcing things like your cowbell and your horse neigh, where do you have a particular library of sounds that you go to? Do you use the assets in Camtasia? What is your favorite way of doing that?
Yeah, I'll use a lot of the assets in Camtasia. For this one, I got all of it from Envato Elements. So I got the sound effects there. I found the music there. So that's the resource I use. But I'll also use the assets as well for other videos.
Gotcha. Oh, I guess there's one more question,
Yeah,
Tim,
that's
if you're
fine.
okay.
I'm
A
totally
ton
good.
of questions are pouring in general about the end of your video, wanting to know how you crafted the very end of your video. And if anyone in the chat can give me a little bit more context around that, I would appreciate
Mm,
that. Josh, I'm calling you out publicly.
are we talking about, let me find it here. Let me open this. Are we talking about, I'll go to the very end of one of these videos here.
I'm trying to get yeah, I think there's just, yeah, it's probably, I'm gonna guess it's that where
Or
you're
is it
bringing it
this?
into a YouTube looking interface. That's a very powerful common thing we see people doing, especially when you're doing call to actions and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I'll answer both of these. Okay, so for
Okay.
this thing, I have my YouTube subscribe thing, and like I have my little lower footer thing there. The YouTube subscribe thing, if I go into my files here, give me 1 second. I have not YouTube opener, YouTube subscription animation. This was actually something I also created in Camtasia. So I believe I created this graphic in Illustrator, and I made sure I have this little line that's a 16:9 aspect ratio, and it animates in, it's zoomed in and then it animates in and then it animates back out. And there's some of the mouse cursors and whatnot making some animations. And then what I do is I just throw that in here and um, I make my video shrink with it. So it looks all kind of seamless. I do that
Hmm.
there. Now, this is one area. Okay, this is where I have to contradict myself. There's only one thing that I don't animate in Camtasia, and I hope this isn't what Josh was asking about, is that. That's not animated in Camtasia. This was actually, but I don't know how to animate in After Effects, so this is what I will say. I downloaded a logo template for After Effects and from Envato Elements, and I threw my logo in there, and it did this, and then I exported it, and I brought it into Camtasia. So I
Cool.
would not know how to animate that, but in the Camtasia assets, there's a bunch of templates for logo openers. It's not as complex as this, but there's a lot of options there. This is the only thing that's not in Camtasia. This is actually a template.
Yeah, I mean, I use Lottie files. I mean, there's
Yeah,
nothing wrong with
same
it.
thing.
There's nothing wrong with using all the tools in your toolkit to make the
Yep.
best possible video you possibly can. Oh my gosh, Tim, I don't know if you know this, but you just went roughly 2 hours on an incredible amount of learning content for us. So first and foremost, we want to say thank you
Yeah,
for
of
this
course. Thank you
incredible
for having
share
me.
out. Yeah, this was awesome. We are collecting all this information. We will definitely have the recording out, but before anybody goes, there's one more thing that we're here for where Tim gets to relax,
Yes.
take a sip of coffee, tea, or whatever beverage he has. And we're going to welcome in Growth Program Manager at TechSmith here, Emmy Musser. Emmy, how's it going today?
So great. Tim, happy birthday.
Thank
I'm like
you.
feverishly taking notes, trying to make my stuff better, but tough act to follow. Fortunately,
We
I
were
have
going to
really cool
sing.
technology to show, so winning.
Yeah. Well, we were going to sing to Tim, but yeah,
No, please do not.
fair.